Paralegal Power Break. Today's topic is titled, "Is a degree necessary for a paralegal?" Now, this is one of those topics that's heavily debated, and I might be biased, unbiased, I don't know. I'm going to try to stay as unbiased as possible in this presentation because the purpose is just to give you the information so you can determine if you need a degree, if it will be beneficial for you to have a degree as a paralegal. So what I want to discuss is a chapter in the Empowered Paralegal Professional Anthology it was edited by Robert E. Mong. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a lawyer. He's also a teacher. I believe he's in Louisiana. And this particular book and this chapter has articles written by paralegals and paralegal educators. Now, in this chapter, which is chapter 7, it is really interesting because it discusses education from the basis of establishing the paralegal career as a profession, and it relates it to professions like a physician assistant or a nurse, where there are some established educational requirements for someone to enter the profession. Now, you may or may not already know that to become a paralegal, technically, you don't need a degree. You don't need a certificate. You can go work for a law firm and you can start off as a receptionist and be trained. You can go work for a law firm and they might hire you without any training to be a paralegal and then train you in-house. So there's no educational requirements that are necessary in order to become a paralegal. So when discussing is a degree, and I specifically put a degree and not a certificate because there's a lot of different organizations and companies that offer certificates, and because there's no defined educational requirements to become a paralegal, they will differ from one institution to the next unless it's an ABA approved program. If it's an ABA approved program where an individual is getting their certificate, then it will follow some standard guidelines, because in order for a program to be approved by the ABA, the American Bar Association, it has to meet their guidelines and their standards. But outside of that, if you go to a company or organization or a school to get a certificate, there's no educational guidelines. Now, when you get a degree, whether that be an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, then some things are going to be similar. Like there's going to be some general education requirements, meaning that in addition to you taking legal courses and paralegal specific courses, you'll be asked to take some general education courses, write English, math, just some general education so that you can be well-rounded. So when asking and determining if a degree is necessary, whether you are a paralegal professional and you're part of a paralegal association, and this is one of the topics that your association is determining as far as licensing or whatever the case may be, or your law firm, or you as an individual, you can take that into consideration, that if an individual obtains a certificate and it's not obtained from an institution that is approved by the American Bar Association, how can you compare candidates or individuals from different schools and organizations? It's difficult to do that unless there's some standard guidelines and requirements in place, like with the ABA approved certificate. But when looking at a degreed individual, then there's some basics that any degree holding individual is going to have as far as English and math and other subject matter. So in this particular session, again, the goal is to be able to provide you with information, some particular items to think on as far as a paralegal and is a degree necessary for a paralegal. Now, if this is your first session, you may not know my background. I've worked in the legal field as a paralegal in other roles for over 15 years. I have an associate's degree as a paralegal that I earned at a city college. Locally, I'm in San Diego, Then I also have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's in MBA, but then I also have a master's in paralegal studies. Now, although my master's in paralegal studies is not approved by the American Bar Association, there are certain other type of criteria that I had to meet in order to be able to get that master's degree. So, again, when individuals or companies are looking at what an individual paralegal should have, then there's things that are already going to be covered when an individual has a degree, whether that be an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, whatever. But again, I said in the beginning, I'm going to try to stay unbiased because I do have a degree as a paralegal, and I think that it makes you well-rounded, not just as a legal professional, but just as a professional, period. It provides you with information and it develops other skills than just legal skills, and that's something that's extremely important as a paralegal. That's one of the reasons why paralegals are so beneficial to attorneys, because attorneys tend to speak in legalese. Sometimes, if they're talking to clients may have no clue what they're talking about because they tend to speak in legalese, and they address their communication and their conversation with clients in that manner, whether that be a written letter to update a client or that be verbal communication, is laced with legalese that clients don't understand and they don't get, and it may push that client away as far as being able to build trust with them so that handling a legal issue will be easier because that relationship is built. That's where the paralegal comes in, that where paralegal usually does not approach conversation and communication with clients that way, because for one, they're not trained as attorneys. Attorneys are trained to think the way they do and speak the way that they do, and sometimes it's hard for them to turn that off when they're talking to clients. Paralegals don't have that barrier to overcome, so a lot of law firms will rely on paralegals to communicate with clients. Now, when you're communicating with clients, it's not just verbal communication, it's also written communication. One of the main issues that attorneys have is their lack of communication with clients, lack of updating them, whether that be verbally or in writing. So if you as a paralegal develop your communication skills, specifically your written communication skills, then you would then be able to fill in a area that's not being provided right now to your law firm or your potential law firm, and then you would thus be able to reduce the risk of malpractice claims, because of a lot of legal malpractice claims, complaints that are made to the bar, lawsuits that are filed against attorneys derive from the lack of communication. So going back to the question again, is a degree necessary for a paralegal? Then you have to ask yourself that. Is that necessary in order for you to be as effective as possible? You can be a paralegal, again, by just being trained in your law firm. But what happens when you go work for another organization where they don't have those templates there? They don't communicate with the clients the same way that that firm that you got trained as a paralegal communicates at from, or communicated in that way. Then you're going to have to be retrained in that organization's way of communicating or writing letters or whatever the case may be, or you're going to have to go and get the necessary education so that you can do that effectively. So my hopefully unbiased, it may not be as unbiased as I think it is, question or approach is for you to ask yourself some questions. One is, will a degree help you as an individual be more effective? Will it help you get to where you need to be in your career? If you are a member of association or a leader in association, will the requirement for individuals to have a degree, will it make a difference in the services that are provided as a paralegal? These are questions that can be asked to determine if that's a necessity or not. And again, if you can post any questions or comments to this topic in the discussion forum, just to see, what others, where their line of thinking is as far as is a degree necessary for a paralegal, because these one reason for these sessions is to open up discussion on some topics that come up frequently in the paralegal world. So, feel free to post questions and answer questions. And again, do some research for yourself as far as, if you're looking to move on to let's say a paralegal manager position, if you're looking to move into a different practice area, if you're looking to move into a different region, because some regions have different requirements. If a region is highly saturated with paralegal, what I mean by region, let's say right now you're working in a small town in some state, and you want to then move into a larger city, that region may be saturated with paralegals. If you don't have a degree, are you going to be as competitive? Even if you have the experience, some companies will not even take a look at you if, one, you don't have an ABA approved certificate or you don't have a degree. So you have to ask yourself those particular type of questions of yourself. And then also, again, if you're a leader in a paralegal association, what is going to make your members more effective in the legal community? Because again, you can work for one law firm for 15 years. What happens if they go out of business? What happens if you decide to make some type of move in another organization, and now you're in a position where you have all this experience, but then now the position that you really, really want is requiring a degree? It's better to plan ahead for these particular issues, again, by doing some research, looking at what is the norm in your region, or a region that you want to go into, a different practice area you want to go into, a different organization you want to go into. Look at their requirements and line yourself up to be able to have those requirements in place, so that when you take that move or you take that next step in your career, you already have what's necessary in order to land that particular job or that promotion. So with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap this particular session up. I hope that it was helpful. And again, some of this information that I got as far as the topic of education, allowing the paralegal profession to be more in line with other profession, came from the book, The Empowered Paralegal Professional Anthology, edited by Robert E. Mung. And again, he's an attorney and a educator. I believe he's in the state of Louisiana. If not, I apologize in advance for the mistake. But go ahead and post any comments or questions in the discussion forum. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.